Zero interest in the city. Zero. I don't want to go see it. I don't.
Okay, so what?
Oh, sorry. It's this multitasking that we do to make sure everybody can see everything. So. You all see the agenda there? I see a few people nodding, so thank you.
Margaret, are you ready or?
Yep, I'm good.
All right, we will call the meeting to order at 5:30. So why don't we start with consent agenda? I'll turn it over to you, Margaret.
So we have for today, whoops, let me just see here. Now I just lost my consent agenda. So not any that were completely unexpected, but we had a staff retirement for a special ed teacher, a couple of other special ed teachers that have resigned at the middle school, and one person who is not coming back from an extended leave of absence. We have continued to make paraprofessional appointments as they come up through the year, and then we have these extracurricular appointments, which are formatted differently. Obviously, when we have the musical coming up in spring, we have a large number of a surge of extracurricular appointments because these are like one and done type of appointments. They work for the spring musical and then they go away once the performances are completely done. There might be, a little bit of flexibility there in terms of how long they stay for wrap up and things like that. So that's what we have. I don't know if anyone has questions about any of those.
Yeah, I move that we don't allow Jeff Lehman to retire.
I think the principal had also sent an email to that effect saying that he refused to accept that. I think it was he's had a long and esteemed career here in the district, and we will definitely be sad to see him go. So,
Okay, retract it.
okay, but please, please.
Don't have to look at me when it comes to my.
Right.
All right, seeing no questions, any questions online? Hearing and seeing none, let's go to the employee satisfaction survey.
Okay, Bill, do you want to do some screen sharing here? Let me just stop my share real quick and let me first introduce, for those of you who don't know him, Bill Foster from School Perceptions. I think some of you do know Bill from past years. They've been administering the employee satisfaction survey for the last 4 years.
At least, yeah.
And Bill usually visits us around this time of year to present a timeline for administration of the survey. So I'll turn it over to you, Bill. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm joined with my partner Derek tonight. I think he attended your planning meeting in January, so maybe you're seen his face before. But basically, our goal tonight is to go through the timeline, confirm the timeline, and then take a look at the survey and see if there's any changes. So right now, we've got a goal to have our survey finalized by the end of this month. So we've got a couple weeks if you want to make any changes. You're going to be going all to Florida, I hear, the week of March 24th to the 29th. Then when you come back, everybody will be happy. And we're going to be launching the survey in mid-April with a deadline of April 25th. And then with the goal to come back and present results on May 19th. Is that, Margaret, does that look like the right timeline?
That looks like a timeline that's similar, maybe just a little bit earlier than what we've had in past years where we went into that last week of April,
Okay.
or the first week of May, but I think we had been trying to move a little bit more towards the earlier before the end of the school year. So, I mean, this would work, but still give us a timeline that's comparable enough to past data.
Yeah, I'm a fan of as the weather warms, staff are just like kids. Surveys aren't quite as attractive. So if we can get it done a week or two earlier, I think that's good, and we'll still be able to get reports back to you by that third week in May. So and then let's go over to the survey. So I brought over the same. Make it a little bigger here. Same survey we went with last year, and really the backstory on this is for a number of years we used a Watertown custom survey, and then last year we created this survey, which is primarily built on our base survey with some additional Watertown questions. So basically, the demographic information that we gather are the school that the person works at and their position, and we are able to cross tab and disaggregate Douglas teachers and Lebanon teachers and so on and so forth. So we find these two questions to be pretty helpful. The next three sections are standard for ours. So in other words, these are questions that many staff members across not only the state of Wisconsin, but Midwest are taking. So we've got good comparison data on Workday. I'll let you read those. On environment, this is kind of the traditional climate items. By the way, student discipline is the biggest challenge facing all school districts in Wisconsin right now. And then there's a support section. Now, this support section, a couple of these items are Watertown specific, but the majority of these are in our base survey. And there is one additional section on this page on supporting equal opportunities for different backgrounds, racial backgrounds, cultural, and students with special needs. And then this is the additional items are the Watertown specific that we carried over from previous surveys. And this was important to the group to be able to provide longitudinal data on these items. And again, these two are Watertown specific compared to a year ago, overall job satisfaction, and trying to measure commitment to long-term career. Again, we know where we were last year. We can actually weight these like a 4, 3, 2, 1, create an average score, and then measure again and say, has it improved? Has it dropped? And that's a way to quantify overall satisfaction. And then on recommendations, this is the one place where staff members have a opportunity to make comments. This is kind of our wrap-up question. It's based on a Net Promoter Framework. So that gives us very good high-level comparison data with other districts. And then we simply have biggest strengths and where could the district improve as comments to be analyzed. So that was a survey that we ran last year. And I guess the question on the table is that, does the group want to repeat that this year?
Yes. I like that, sir.
Dan says yes. Jerry, for some background, we were looking to kind of stay consistent, is what the talk was last year, so that we could look backwards always and kind of measure where were we last year, where are we this year, where are we going next year type of a thing. So my recommendation too would be to go with the same survey, how your feelings are.
Absolutely. I actually, having not had the contacts, had a question as it relates to, looking at the timeline and things like that earlier. And then it said to send an email out to people who hadn't completed it. I'm guessing then that this is not an anonymous survey.
It is anonymous.
It is.
Yeah,
It
it's a good, so our software is programmed, so it's anonymous, but the software knows which emails have responded, which ones have not. So if you haven't taken it, we call internally, we call it the Slacker tracker. Um, so if you haven't taken it, the software will send out a gentle reminder followed up with a last chance. And then, but we don't know, you don't know. And actually our programmer probably could go in and behind in the tables and figure it out, but it really is anonymous and it's anonymous to me as well. So our people in our company can't go in and see what an individual is saying.
And I can't, and nobody here in the district can see any of the individual responses. So, yeah.
Judy, last year, the comments were really helpful, I thought.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, no, and I mean, I love the idea of doing a touch point and especially to have the same questions. So we're tracking longitudinally over time. I just, whenever I see that, just from my day job perspective, you know, we do our employee engagement surveys. It's the same kind of setup behind the scenes where it's anonymous, but people still question anonymity. So sometimes it affects their answers. So that's why just seeing that, I just wanted clarification. So thank
Yeah,
you.
and I think that was part of the reason a few years back that we actually ended up working with Bill was because there was kind of the shadow of it's not anonymous and it was administered out of the district office, out of the superintendent's office. And came a point where we couldn't get enough responses or it just was starting to become ineffective. And that's when we started working with Bill in order to build a very clear wall between information that was submitted and our ability to see the individual who submitted that. So
And then is there usually a follow-on, like afterwards to say, here were some of the recommendations, you know, here are some of the actions we
Yeah.
took based on feedback?
we'll come back to the committee with the results and usually Zooms in for that presentation. I think it's historically been in June or July, Bill.
That sounds right. Yeah.
And we go through what the outcome of the survey was. And I mean, there's a little bit of breaking down based on various levels, but not enough that people would be able to determine individual responses. We do get a number, we allow qualitative comments as well. And sometimes just by virtue of the qualitative comments, if you have been around the district, you might kind of get a sense of where they're coming from, or they'll identify where what their concerns or issues are. But then Bill has a staff person who then does like a compilation of the qualitative comments into themes. And then we have historically come up with action plans to identify like what the key themes are and then talk with Jared, who just joined the meeting, on what type of specific actions we'll take both in the short and longer term to address some of the concerns on the survey.
That's really the key of making this work. And if Jared stands up on the opening day in August and said, we asked, we listened, and there's, you know, a couple things we're going to be modifying based on your feedback, the staff will take the survey again. They say, okay, I see how this works. If they never hear any feedback or anything that happens, you'll see participation rates drop, where otherwise you actually see them increase if staff feels like they're being heard.
I think we've really driven up the participation to the point where, like, we have a communication plan to roll out, not to individuals, but at the school level, where for staff, if we know that participation is lagging, we'll ask the building principals to allocate some time, 10 or 15 minutes during a staff meeting to allow time to finish the survey. And just send out, like, Bill's team sends out reminders. I send out reminders based on the feedback I'm getting from school perception in terms of just the raw numbers of people that are responding according to our timeline. So, the last year particularly, we really pulled that together, I thought, in terms
Yeah,
of.
we were up to 370. That was our highest year that we had. So it's actually has gotten better. Yeah, it looks like.
Do they have the option of stating their name?
Pardon me?
Do they have the option of giving their name?
I suppose, no, not, it doesn't, there's not a specific field to allow you to do that. I mean, I suppose you,
You could sign a comment, or you could say, my
Mhm.
name's Bill and I work at Lebanon and I'd like to know this.
Right.
But short of doing that, it is anonymous, and we don't ask for their any information.
Any further questions? Online? Seeing none? Well, thank you for that. Truly appreciate it.
Okay, good. We'll
Thanks,
get
Bill.
all
Good
right.
to meet you, Derek.
Likewise.
Okay. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, you too. Take care,
See you
Bill.
later.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, then now we're gonna move on to extracurricular appointments or some clarification around it.
So I think we had this discussion the last time that we were talking about, I'm just trying to get back to the screen here. About extracurricular appointments and a level of specificity related to how we do those appointments. And we decided, you guys had asked for additional information related to how we make those appointments, whether they're recurring or new hires. I had taken that request back to Jamie Kep and Sarah Miller, who do most of the administrative heavy lifting on extracurricular assignments, and have put together this draft report in terms of the information that has usually been asked at these HR committee meetings, which is this a recurring appointment? Was it posted? Yes or no? Who got hired? Which of course is always part of the consent agenda. And then any extra, anecdotal notes as it relates to anything having to do with like the timing, because sometimes we post out of season appointments, and like, why did that happen? Somebody abruptly resigned or unanticipated vacancy occurred. We added a particular position, which we haven't done for quite a while. So that's what the notes section is for. And I just put this together to see if this is what you're asking, because if this is, we can do something like this, but then what I am intending to do is to get rid of the table here on the consent agenda, because this table does not translate well to the work that Lynn Linskins does to prepare the resolution that actually gets passed at the board level. So we would go back to just listing all of those, and then we would have this background report on anyone that was on the actual monthly consent agenda that is submitted to the board. So I'm hoping that would meet what you're looking for. I don't know, some of you are looking for more.
Margaret, can
Yep.
I ask a question of the committee? Because I asked you this question, and my question is this, and I wasn't at the last meeting. What is driving the need or want for having more oversight over the processes by which we hire at the administrative level?
That's a great question, Jared, and kind of thinking backwards, if I remember right, it was more along the lines, if I remember, of one or two just comments and questions that were just asked around extracurriculars. I don't think there's anything like really driving or anything really like, hey, we have to see more, more along the lines of same question. I think pretty much from the same individual every time even. So
And I don't think that individual's here because I know.
I wasn't gonna say that, but okay, fair enough. And so I guess driving behind it, that's a great question. I don't think there's anything like super.
The only reason I asked is because I asked Margaret. I said, why do we have all this extra information and such a departure from what we've delivered in the past? And why is that generating a different workload? And what are the because I'm more of a person that I want to get to the root of the cause. And, if it's, hey, we just want more transparency of information or whatever, okay, I can understand that, and then ask a little bit more, what is the transparency that you'd like to see? But if there's a problem with the hiring process, I need to know that, if that's what's generating these questions. And if it's more information, then my question is for what reasons do you want that more information? What is it that you need? And I'm just trying to get at the root cause of that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And is there a way we could maybe table this until next month when we have a full committee and?
I mean,
Hey, Mike,
Yeah,
this is
go ahead,
Craig. I just wanted to point out that Craig has his hand up, so I don't want to go before Craig because he actually raised his hand. I'm just talking. So, but please, acknowledge Craig, and then I'll have some comments on it as well.
Sure. No, thanks for pointing that out. My back was to the screen. Craig, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the recent request is for this, but yeah, I would think that more transparency in the hiring process, as far as background information on individuals before the board makes a formal approval of those particular individuals. I think that's probably what was being driven at. So, and that again is a board, as a state statutory right of the board to make approvals of staff. And so, yeah, I think that's I think that's probably what they're after.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Craig. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but uh, it sounds right, but I'd rather be sure, right?
Okay, and if I may, first of all, I'm not gifted at the Zoom stuff, so I don't even know how to raise my hand. Uh, if, but if I may,
That's okay. I forget to lower my hand, so it's
yeah. I was present when this came up, and you're right, both Dan and Mike, it was largely driven by the former chair. And I don't think it was as much about the names, Margaret, as much as it was about the number of positions and the timing.
Right. I
And
think you're right.
in which case there was some questions regarding why are we talking about a volleyball coach and we're already 2 months into the season, or et cetera. And I don't, Jared, personally have a lot of energy on this. I don't think that we need to treat extracurricular with any more, what do you want to call attention than we do anybody else on Margaret's consent agenda. I agree with Craig that the board does get that reviewed with them, but and has the need to approve it. But I wouldn't treat this any differently than any other appointment. But there was certainly a gap in the understanding of how these are filled and when they're filled. And this is not a suggestion or a request. Let me rephrase this. This is not a request. This is for example, suggestion. Margaret, would a document like this, irrespective of names, be able to be filled out the first 2 columns for every extracurricular position we have? Not to say that we should, but if the goal was an understanding of the process, then maybe the date posted, the first 3 columns, would that be something that would satisfy the previous request? But Mike as current chair and you, Dan, and Charity as current committee members, plus Diana, I forget who the fourth one is. But if you want to table this, I suggest you table it. I don't see a lot of energy from the rest of the board, with the exception of what Craig just said, which is we have the duty to review these at any time that they come forward for approval. But I don't see an extraordinary effort required at this time, aside from just our understanding, Jared.
Yeah, my understanding is in the processes in the past, right? And that's why I'm asking because this is the departure, at least on paper. Uh, if the board wanted to see specific information around a candidate and the HR committee asked for that piece of information, that information would come forward together in the board packet so that you could have a review of that at the board level if you wanted to before you made a yes or no up or down on any hire. But as a clearinghouse in general, stuff that went to the committee were just as you see above, like regular names of people, the position that they're in, and so on. And that's the clearinghouse that it went through. And so if there's going to be a change, and I'm just trying to understand what we're looking at, are we looking at a change in how we operate, or what, or just an understanding? I'm just coming in after I see a change in operation that is leading to more work and a difference, and I didn't even know where it was coming from, right? And if we look at the processes of hiring, right, those are within administration. The approval of the hires, yes, are at the board, but again, we had a process for that, which is we went to a clearinghouse. That clearinghouse said, "Hey, yes, up or down, or maybe we need more information, and can you bring that along to the board level? Can you include that in the packet?" And we had that all figured out. But this sounds like it's going deeper into the processes than that, and I want to know what's driving that so I can help guide the right change if we
Well,
need to.
Jared, I wouldn't read it that way. I think it was more of an understanding as to how extracurricular positions get filled and at what's the timeline of them. But I will defer entirely to a discussion among committee members to answer yours and Margaret's questions for what next.
Okay.
And then they can recommend it to the full board. I'm not on the committee and I don't have, so I'm not going to weigh in with the vote on this topic. The four committee members in the room should discuss that and give some direction.
Yeah, no, and thanks for clarifying a little bit there, David. Jared, that David hit it right on the head where this kind of stemmed from. If there was a softball coach, for example, hired, and sometimes it wouldn't come before the committee until 2, 3, 4 weeks into the season, and then we would say, well, how did that happen? Were they not hired before? I think so. It was just how the timing of things worked is really, I think, where the question stemmed.
Okay.
I truly don't think diving any deeper. I agree with Craig, transparency, but digging deeper than how does it work is a necessity, really. But unless somebody can, yeah, Dan.
Well, Jared, I have one detail that I really like when we look at the list of assistant coaches, whether they're staff or not.
Mike,
And the reason I like that is that if we have a 10 coach staff and 9 of them are non-staff, that seems to be a bit of a red flag. So I'd like to know, if we're hiring staff members and their initial contract has them coaching football and then all of a sudden they're not coaching anymore, their original contract is changed enough, so we're always looking for coaches. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's my concern, but
Okay.
Craig,
Well, then I think the proper thing to do is to maybe just have a little bit more discussion about what is useful. It doesn't sound like you guys are looking at a wholesale change in how we do business. Maybe a little bit more information, and maybe we put too much information on this report for you right now. And for Craig, I don't know if we need anything different than the process we had in place before, which I thought was useful. Which is if the committee needed more information, they sent that up to the board. Unless you think that we should do something different in that regard.
Well, I'm anticipating personally, I think that there needs to be a different structure in place. But my question to you would be, since Wh- When was the last time the HR committee has ever not approved a particular recommendation of a candidate to move forward to the board? And I would say I haven't witnessed that. And if that is the purview of the HR committee to do that as a clearinghouse, so to speak, were they aware that they have that purview to do so? Because if that's the case, then we need to be on the same page.
Well, good question, Craig. And in my time that I've been on HR the entire time. We've never not gone forward with recommendations, but there have been some awful good discussions for some of them, right? So I think we were aware, but thank you for bringing it up. We do have Charity here, and she is new to the committee, right? So, but I think we were aware. Just never had a reason yet to go, whoa, that would be a good idea.
So the consent agenda has been put together for overall hiring approval. The HR committee has not historically participated in an assessment of the hiring decisions that have been made, because I think, like Jared said, it's been our understanding that those are decisions that have been, the actual person that's hired into the position is decided by the interview and hiring process that we use when we have a vacancy. And then at the board level, there's been at least one incident since the time that I've been here, since 2018, where a board member specifically identified a person that they were not in favor of supporting as a hire or as a continuing hire at a board meeting. So we would forward this list of the consent agenda. And then at the time that the consent agenda was put up for the resolution was put up, each board member then, like all the resolutions, if there's like any discussion on that, at that point, any board member would be able to isolate a single hire and say, I will not, would make a motion or would just say, I will not approve that individual. And I don't know all the Robert Rules for Order as that, like what the official process for that is, but it did give the board, each board member, the ability to say, I do not support a specific hire. The other thing, though, is like with respect to individual hires, like we are in open session. And so debating the individual qualifications and, that kind of gets pretty blurry in terms of privacy issues. So, I mean, usually when we discuss specific people, we go into closed session when we're looking at a personnel discussion about an employee. We have, and I mean, some of you may have been involved in some of those where we've had a couple closed session discussions related to personnel matters, but that's always done in closed so that we can talk specifically about that individual and whatever circumstances led us to that point of going into closed session. So I mean, I don't know if that helps or not, but that has historically been the process.
I guess my question is, do we need to know when the start date is? Just looking at musical, for instance, I was at Solon Ensemble on Saturday and they have the set half built. So these folks, if they aren't formally approved until now, but they've been doing work, is that good faith that we will put them forward and approve them? And then if for whatever reason somebody did challenge them, would we be liable for not having them as an approved employee as of the time they started the work?
And I think that gets to the root of the challenge that we have, right?
So from a practice standpoint, these like recurring appointments are scheduled according to match a payroll cycle. There's a schedule for making payments related to fall sports, winter sports, and spring sports and activities. So like right now, we're coming up on our timing for payroll purposes to start paying out the stipends for these individual roles, which are different than how we pay people on a regular basis. So there's a specifically defined schedule that is in the staff handbook that says this is how we pay out these um, um, s- uh, payments over and above your regular or other um, pay type. So that's where a lot of these, how the timing of all of these kind of gets set up, where it's like, okay, the spring musical is coming up. I think it is safe to say that if you're a recurring hire, there is an expectation of continued employment unless and until told otherwise, right? But that would happen before these names ever got to consent agenda, because the consent agenda is like, we have gone through the hiring or appointment process. I mean, this is like, there is a spreadsheet that we track all of these appointments, and they're scheduled by those 3 seasonal timeframes. And so like now we know that the spring musical pay is going to have to start breaking pretty soon. So we put all of those through once they all get finalized. It does sometimes take time to finalize, and changes do occur as hiring, just like with any hiring. I mean, people come and go, hopefully not too many, not at the right or wrong at the wrong time, but that does happen. And so then they get like just added to the mix, I guess is the best way to say that. Most of that work is done between Sarah Miller in HR and Jamie Kep, and or the person, like for example with the spring musical, it's usually done with the director of the musical team, the person that is directing
So,
that. We also have
Margaret,
people with CTE, like Skills USA, kind of the same thing. Okay, sorry, I'm done.
no, that's okay. I think my question, which started this off, it was to seek understanding of why, we made a change in the consent agenda. I think where we need to go, and it's not tonight because it's not necessarily addressed, right? We need to have a discussion about the consent agenda and hiring practices, right? To see if we need to make any changes to that. And that's a different night. I was just trying to seek clarification as to why there was a change put forth, and how that change got put forth without having a process. I didn't know, and so I think we need to go back and change the process and develop it there.
Yeah, thank you, Jared, and.
And I think Craig
Yeah.
still is up
Yeah,
again.
Yeah, but yeah, it's another comments that I feel like just if we're going to explore the process in further detail, one of the questions and or concerns that I have is making sure that it's understood that is built into that process, that the board does have the ultimate veto power of that approval at that board level, at that board meeting, if that's the practice that we're going to, that is in existence currently, where the board votes on that consent agenda.
I
And
think that's
if
already out there, Craig. I think that everybody, and if people don't know that, then I think we need to do a better job of sharing that.
yes, I agree. And the other component is if the assumption is that there's some sort of liability or that creates by a board not approving of a particular contract or an individual, then we have to change that whole process so that we aren't uh, at at risk of any particular type of a liability situation. So just some of the concerns, and from what I'm gathering from Margaret's comments right now, that we're not necessarily in a point of liability if the board chooses not to move forward with the approval of a contract at the board level.
No, the way you keep yourself out of that is you say, I make a motion to remove this from the consent agenda, right? you get your discussion points on why the removal, and the discussion point is, I'd like to talk about this further, and we would need to have a closed session to be able to talk about this further. And then the next month we put it on for closed session to get that hire moving forward. That's the only way you can do it, other than having a closed session for every meeting, whether you need it or not. And I will not suggest we do that. That gets into all sorts of difficulties. So, if there is a question, it's always the board's possibility to say, I want to remove this name from the consent agenda, right?
Uh,
Or vote on it separately without further discussion. And then if it's removed from the consent agenda, put it on for a closed session discussion.
I understand. I understand the concern of whether or not that there isn't perhaps the desire to be in a situation where we go to closed session every month or whatever the case
Mhm.
may be to have those discussions, but other school boards do that.
Well,
And
they do, but we also have a clearinghouse. We have an HR committee that should do the work on that on the front half, right? If there's concerns.
they should do.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be sure. Okay.
Yeah. And so that should limit the number of times we would have to pull something, go into closed session, then talk about it.
I would say if we could, just for the sake of time, great discussion. Craig, I appreciate the feedback. Margaret, if maybe we could put this on for the discussion.
Action item next month. Okay.
Any closing remarks on that before we move forward?
Just thank you for indulging the question of why. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, anytime. All right, seeing no other, Dan, did you have one?
Well, no, I was just gonna say to Charity's point, we would have to have a vehicle where we're paying those people up to that point, and we said we don't want them working for the play anymore, for some reason. If
Right.
they've worked that long, we gotta have a vehicle to pay them.
Well, I think that goes back to Jared's comment about the hiring process, because if there's no, like, if the expectations of how things are being processed and administered changes, then, I mean, that would open the conversation as to, can we tell people that they are gonna be recurring hires or
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
And if we can't, that has some other impacts, but that's a longer discussion than
More than the 2 or 3 minutes?
Sorry, I didn't think it was me.
No, you're good. All right, well, I'll be looking for a motion to go into closed session then. Yeah, the motion.
Who's the motion?
Motion.
Carried.
We're gonna go over.
Oh,
the
okay, I see. Yeah.
Is that a second from
All
Dan?
right, we are moving to closed session.
Okay, so those of you online, if you could just give us a minute to get the recording stopped and also make sure that we're all in closed session. Here, Max 9, could you please identify yourself? Are you part of the school district employment or board or administrative team? Max 9. Okay, Max 9, I'm going to remove you from the closed session. Telephone number 608-377-3400. Could you please identify if you are to attend this closed session? I'm sorry, who are you?
Hi, I'm just a citizen listening in.
Okay, I'll move you, sir, to the waiting room until the closed session is over.
Okay, thank you.
So right now I'm showing David Schrader, Sarah Oudenhoven, Sarah Duncan, Jason Bull. Oops, sorry. Sarah Oudenhoven. So I have 7 people, all of which look to be on the school board or the administration team. So we're good. And did we do a voice vote for?
We didn't, since there's only three people here, but, do you want to do a voice vote?
I think we're supposed to.
Okay, do you wanna come call them off, or do you want me?
It,
Charity,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
me, I,
and then David, I think, serves as the fourth person.
David, are you good that we're in closed session?
Aye.
Thank you. I just need to let people in. One more, I think I still have somebody in the waiting room here, so. Okay, we are back and open on all fronts.
All right, so we're gonna be looking at future meeting planning. So when we look at that calendar, get to next month on that calendar, March, we got the consent agenda. We'll start talking about summer school, staff. And tentatively some more staff planning.
Yep, so, I mean, so from tonight's meeting, I'll be carrying forward the extracurricular appointments process. I'll probably retitle that, just based on what we were talking about. The consent agenda, the summer school staff consent agenda, just so you know, is like, it usually starts to rev up around March and is ongoing for it sometimes seems a really long time that we have summer school hires, but that's a separate consent agenda. And we will like the regular employment consent agenda, we will have a draft of that every month now for the next few months. I'll add the staffing plan as an addition to March's. I'll confirm that. We may potentially have a pay model update. I don't know if we're going to be ready to bring that to the HR committee in March. And then negotiation scheduling is essentially right now a placeholder, because we still have so much uncertainty in terms of what the state budget is going to look like. And so we're not even really, I think, at a point where we can start talking about going into closed for, discussion of what type of proposal we would want to put together. And then the Employee Wellness Committee continues to do their good work, and I'll bring an update on some of their activities and challenges that have been going on for the last few months. So
Thanks, Margaret. Is there anything else you guys think we should put on there? Minus what Margaret is adding already from action items from tonight.
Are you talking about for next
for
month?
next month.
Well, I don't know if I'm serious about adding this, but we got a mailing and there was just a little piece of paper with it that said volunteer opportunities. And I thought that was very clever. If we have volunteer opportunities at various schools and the communications we send out, like that, you can volunteer for this position, we might get some takers. And so just a little, bit of communication, every time we send something out to parents, we might get a grandmother that comes in and reads to the kids or whatever.
Yeah. I think we tried that. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a bad idea by any stretch, but I think we did try that when you were first coming on, wasn't it, Jared? Or maybe I'm wrong.
We've had a couple,
Something simple.
yeah, we've had a couple.
Yeah,
of-
I mean,
Go ahead, Jared.
I agree. We go through really trying to figure out and find volunteers. And every once in a while I have somebody come in to me and say, hey, I'm looking and I would love to volunteer, love to put in some time. But, somebody told me that you're not, you don't have anything for us to do. And I'm like, let me take down your name and I will find something for you, because there are always opportunities to do that as long as we get people through the proper channels, right? And you may have heard me, Dan, I don't know if you were there when I was at the senior center talking. A gentleman, talked about, how this might be difficult. The referendum might be difficult for him, and he's a senior. And I said, you know what, if you can't do that, let's talk about how you can, help in other ways. I know you're feeling bad about it, but if you want to volunteer or other things, and I think many of you have heard me, we're always looking for people to connect with us. So I'm not opposed to putting that out there.
It might work.
Yeah, it's not an abstract idea. Are you looking to put that on for like more discussion next month?
Yeah. When it's warmer.
Yeah. Might be warmer by Monday. Anything else? Seeing nothing and nothing online. Our next meeting will be on March 10th. And I will be looking for somebody that wants to go home.
I so moved that we go home.
Judy, are you opposed?
Second the motion. Yeah, opposed, friend.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, all.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Tell you what, I think I'm gonna start my truck before I even go running outside.
Oh, yeah. Must be nice.
I should have did that about 2-3 minutes ago, I suppose, huh? See if it starts from here.
You can get your vehicle running, but then it stops after a